enjoyed the documentary. And for me, it was part of reliving childhood, watching boxing with my dad. So, what was your experience getting to work on it as a director?
Yeah, for me it was more of an act of discovery because I'm a casual boxing fan, and uh I didn't really know the details of Oscar's life or career. So in diving into this project, it was very eye-opening, right? And why I was attracted to this project in the first place was to be able to tell a story about a Mexican American icon.
What was your experience getting to sit with these personalities? What and getting to hear their stories, their versions of everything, how it took place. Not to mention Oscar's father.
Right. Well, here's the thing. Like, first time I met Oscar, I asked him why he wanted to make the film, and he said he wanted to tell the truth about his life, right? And he wanted it to not be sugar-coated. And also he said nothing was off limits, right? So how that and there's a whole kind of discussion about that that has to do with Oscar, but how that relates to everybody else who we interviewed. They were given uh let's say, on the permission is the right word, but they were given permission to speak their mind, to speak their truth, whatever's in their heart, by Oscar, right? He wasn't no none of the subjects that we interviewed were coached up in any way or told, don't talk about this, don't talk about that. Um, and So it was great in that sense, but it were also, there were some difficult moments, right? The father says, the thing about the father, about Oscar's father, is that he was able to do the interview in Spanish, right? And a lot of the interviews that I had seen of him before then were in English, done in English, and he's fine, but he was, sticking to the script, right? It was also a different time and a different, it was during Oscar's career, but now he was able to fully express himself in Spanish, in his own language, and talk about his life and his life with Oscar and Oscar's career. I think in a way that he hasn't really done in front of a camera. So that, and then of course Oscar's three children, three kids who are in the second episode. They, when I before I spoke to them, before we did the interview, we spoke and we talked about boundaries, and we talked about, what they may or may not be comfortable talking about. And I told them, if at any point during the interview there's something you don't want to talk about, you can let me know, and we'll switch subjects, right? We'll switch topics. And and but once the interview started, they just talked, and they were great, and they were wonderful, and his kids are really, they're all amazing in their own way. They're so different, but they're so alike too.
With the sit downs with Oscar.
Great. So, when he said he wanted to tell the truth about his life, I had already started doing my research on him, right, before I met him, and I knew there was a lot to unpack, right, just from the little that I read and little that from starting that process. So I told him, look, if you want to do that, it's not going to happen quick, right? This is going to be a process, and what I proposed were one-on-one interviews, just us two in the room, nobody else, and we'll see how that goes. And he agreed to it, and we ended up the interview process ended up being lasting over a year, uh, and over 30 interviews. And sometimes we would talk for 45 minutes, sometimes we would talk for 3 hours. Sometimes the subject was really heavy, sometimes it was a bit more fun, but we had an idea, very clear idea of the story we wanted to tell. We had a very detailed story map. I knew every session, from my perspective, was calculated, in the sense that we're going to talk about this today, right? We're going to hit these 8 things, right? And we would spend 3 hours talking about, or an hour and a half or whatever, talking about just that. And as you can imagine, you get to some very real kind of place, if you allow somebody the space and the time to do that. But also the other part of it is you build trust, and over the course of that year, there was a trust built and a rapport and a bond built during those interviews where Oscar felt safe in being able to talk about all of these uncomfortable things, and also like the happy things. Sometimes it's even easier to talk about uncomfortable things than it is happy things, to like, he was able to express real joy too. And I think that was great. Nothing hard comes easy. It's all, nothing hard comes fast, right? uh I think is what I'm trying to say. But anyways, that was the process.
I feel like there's a little portion that's kind of like a love letter to his mom.
Hmm.
Can you talk a
Yeah,
little bit about that part? That was pretty emotional. It was hard to grasp how much pain, but yet so much love at the same time.
exactly. Both things. I think there's the it's hard to show and feel love with if you don't show and feel pain. You have to show both, right? You can't just, you can't, if you open yourself up to emotion, you open yourself up to all emotion, right? And I wanted to kind of project that onto the film. And I thought that I knew there was going to be a lot of conversation about Oscar's mom, but I didn't want it to be superficial, and nobody wanted it to be superficial. So the thing we had to figure out was how to tell her story without her being able to tell it for herself. And I think we use a lot of we approach it in a lot of different ways. We talked to some of her her family members, and we also spoke to Josefina Lopez, who was able, to speak to that, the experience of a Mexican American woman growing up in a society that, that's patriarchal society, very male dominated society and culture.
I was pretty shocked when Oscar said that the golden boy is bullshit
Hmm.
to live. Um, I mean, we have this image of the golden boy that it's him, but yeah, he's kind of like, I feel like he's trying to, with this documentary, and you correct me, he's trying to shed that off and be like, I'm Oscar.
Oh, 100%. That's it's always tricky to figure out how you're going to end a film, right? And and like, I think there's I think a need and a desire for, to put something like really uplifting at the end of the film, to like spike the football and to like, have that heroic moment. But with Oscar's story, I knew it was going to be much quieter ending, much more introspective ending. And the fact that he acknowledges that he's a work in progress, and that if he could change things he would, but that's not open to him or to anybody for that matter. And that the golden boy persona in a lot of ways was a burden, because he wasn't an angel, right? He wasn't an angel, but he wasn't just him. There was a team of people that were relying on that squeaky clean image. And um and and uh to be free of that, and to be free of that burden, and to put himself out there as a flawed human who is self-aware, and understands a lot of the hurt that he's caused, but also knows that he has an opportunity to, be a transformation, to transform, right, and to build new relationships with his family and his kids. And I think he's, from what I can tell, what he's told me, what I've heard him talk about, is that he's really embracing that at this point.
I'm excited for the new face of his life because after this, I feel like he's kind of like shedding that off, that burden, and now it's kind of like a new face for him.
So do I, and I'm excited for him too. It's like I spent a year interviewing Oscar, and on some level I know him intimately, and on another level I don't really know him at all, right? Because they're it's a very specific relationship, right? But I'm rooting for him, and I'm grateful that uh, he had the courage to do this. And I hope if anybody, if people take anything away from this film, no matter how you feel about Oscar, whether you know, after watching the film and however your personal feelings about his life you might have, I hope you can appreciate the courage, the absolute courage it took for him to go through with this, and to let others um say whatever they needed to say, right? And not just Oscar's courage, but theirs as well. You know, it's for the courage that a lot of his family members also showed in this process is remarkable. So, um, you know, it's 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 one more story that adds to the Mexican American and the Latino experience in this country, right? It's a very specific story. It's about this kid in East LA who suffered great tragedy, accomplished amazing things, but you know, but was also haunted by demons, right? And but I think if you once you step back, you realize that there's a lot about the Mexican American experience that you can learn from watching this film.
People are definitely going to enjoy. I know I did. I watched the 2 episodes, like I couldn't pause, so I had to finish and conclude. And the ending, I loved.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you, Fernando, for talking to me, and congratulations.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate it.
Hasta luego. Bye.